Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
We are joined live once again by Kristin Ann, Interior Design, and she is live today on the Zoomcast and podcast. I get to see her beautiful backyard. This is in Indiana, right?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. I cannot wait to talk to you because the work she does is beautiful. And we're excited to have her back here on the show to talk more about what she does. Also, she's a realtor and has her broker license as well. There's a lot that she does. So welcome to the show, Kristin. How are you?
I am fantastic. I am enjoying this. I think this is kind of maybe our last summer day, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Well,
what's outside?
What's the weather like?
Well, it's supposed to be about 85 degrees today.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, same here in New York. All right.
Really?
I didn't realize we had similar, temperatures. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's it though. Tomorrow, I think the high is like 60 something. So,
so
I'm like,
I'm
going to sit outside as much as I can today.
Well, thank you for being here. For those new time listeners, please introduce yourself to everyone to start.
Sure. So my name's Kristin Bergunder. I have a design firm, Kristin Ann Interior Design, out of the Indianapolis northern suburb area. And as Jill had mentioned, I'm also a real estate agent with Compass out of the Indianapolis area as well. They're based out of Carmel here in Indiana.
Beautiful. And for those to check you out and your work, tell us the website.
Sure. www.kristinanninteriordesign.com, and that's Kristin with 2 I's.
Beautiful. And also you are on LinkedIn, you're on Facebook, social media as well, but check out the website. You could see so much of her work. My goodness. So for those new timers, what brought you into interior design, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about your background?
Sure. I'm going to let this plane go over my head real fast. That's really rare. Okay. So, wide variety of services. I mean, literally almost anything that you can think of for your home from, I do remodel work is kind of, I don't want to say it's my primary focus, but when we're talking about design as a whole, like what do I get excited about and what do I love the most? Remodel work tends to, be something that, as far as a central focus, if you will, that's something that I really do truly enjoy doing. But I also do 2D and 3D drawing images to kind of help people get a visual of whatever it is that we are redesigning, if you will. Decor, furnishings. I also do new construction consulting. So if you're looking to build a new home, how do we want the home to be laid out? What kind of finishes do we want? What kind of function do we have? So I like to work with people in that initial planning phase. Yeah. And then some of them, I work with them all the way through. I do color consulting, paint color consults, independently, as well as for some painters. And then another service that I provide that I actually do a lot with my connection to the real estate world is I do staging consultations for owner-occupied.
And some people don't even know what staging is. So tell us. No, it's fascinating.
No. Well, see, people misunderstand that staging is like an empty home where you bring furniture into it because nobody's in it. But it's actually so much more than that because the presentation that you have for your residents. So the first thing that people see is online, right? Everybody looks online first. If you can't bring people to the home, you're not going to sell it. And little tiny things. I just did a consult yesterday, as a matter of fact, and she was like, oh my gosh, I just didn't realize all the little things that go into it, from the angle that the camera shoots at, the lighting, what we're going to capture, the position of the furniture. And when people are occupied inside the home, when they're actually trying to sell it, it's a little bit more challenging.
It's hectic. Because we have piles of boxes and stuff. And how do you hide that?
Yeah. And neutralizing too, right? And we have these, mural wall, if you will, of, personal photographs. It was kind of funny. I had done a staging consult for a realtor who had a client who was a huge Bears fan, which to me is personal. I'm from the region near Chicago. Yeah. And so I was like, woo! But at the same token, like his whole basement was full. I mean, he had jerseys and pictures and little figurines, and it was just everywhere. And I had to show them like through a focal lens, when you're looking at that on a camera, what that's going to photograph like. And immediately the dollar signs that people see when they come into the home. And the real estate agent was having a little bit of struggle because they didn't want to do the work. But once I approached it from a different aspect, by the time I left, they were going to be taking all of the things out of that particular area, painting and, doing the right things that they needed to do to get it ready to sell. So, staging is really it's not just hiring a company to come in and bring in furniture because the room is empty. It is truly staging your home from inside and out, even when you're occupied, from landscaping, painting, position of furniture, decluttering. I mean, there is so much that goes into it. And I do a full-blown report too. It's kind of like a homework list. So an added benefit of me walking through the home with the client is also after the fact. I go home and I type up a really detailed report that goes room by room, because there's so much information that I feed to them in that short period of time. And it kind of just gives them a homework list to go back and look at.
Now, as a stager as well, do you have your own furniture that you keep in a storage unit that you move in paintings and back and forth and carpets, or do you rent it? How does that work?
So I have a storage space above my garage.
Okay.
3-car garage. It's unfinished. I have a lot of decor. I have my own little home goods up there, if you will.
Oh my goodness.
But at one point I did have a 2,000 square foot warehouse that I kept a lot of furniture in. I did stage homes, anywhere from 5 to 6 homes at a time, for a period of almost about 2 years. But I learned very quickly throughout that process. I am in my mid 40s, and my body can only handle so much. And I was physically involved in that process quite a bit. And, the real estate world shifts, change, and molds every single day. And so you could plan as much as humanly possible. But there were numerous occasions where I would have an agent call me and they would be like, we don't need it done next week. I need it done tomorrow. Or I don't need it done tomorrow. I need it done next week. And so the schedule was constantly shifting. And it was just very challenging for me to kind of envelope that in with everything else that I already had going on. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. But at one point I had to kind of decide where my limitations were. And so right before COVID, I actually had decided to kind of start downplaying that side of my business, if you will, and kind of removed the full-blown staging. And I still do light staging, if you will. If you have furniture, if you're in your home, if you have a bed and a couch and a dining room table, I can bring all the pretty stuff in. I just can't bring in the big furniture pieces.
Got it.
It was fortunate because, the warehousing space I had at the time was not cheap. The box truck I had was not cheap. The people I had helping me to move all of these things. Yeah. And then COVID happened and the market lost its mind. And so, staging wasn't as needed, if you will, during that period of time. So it was kind of a good decision that I had made that I didn't even know I was making at the time that would be good, that I was kind of removing that. So yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. Also want to point out, for those of you just live on the podcast, you may be able to see her beautiful backyard, the Zoomcast. So you're doing interior design for outdoor spaces too. Tell me a little bit about what you did at your home. That looks
my goodness,
gorgeous.
Thank you. So this covered porch area, obviously like furniture, things of that nature. So behind me here, like that whole pool area there did not exist. We moved into this home about 2 years ago. And something that we absolutely needed to have was the ability to put a pool in. And so we worked with a gentleman who's kind of semi-retired. And he helped put our pool in, and we worked through the whole process of designing it, and then worked with a landscaper who also incorporated, like, we have a little fireplace there.
Oh, beautiful. Is that the Cambridge one? Like the Cambridge kit? I love those. I just did my backyard, so I'm working on. I just did the pool, the stone, but I want to do what you have there. I want to get an extension, do an overhang, get a barbecue. Oh, it looks gorgeous.
Yeah. Well, that's next.
Okay.
That's a present to my husband. So
look at you. Beautiful. Wow. Yeah. Well, so you're also working outdoor spaces. My goodness, there's so much to what you do. But as an interior designer, do you get bored of your own stuff quickly and you want to keep changing things around? So no. Oh,
I
you're
do
so
not.
got it. So you're happy doing for others because you know the work that goes into it. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it's just, I mean, that's one thing about this business that I will say. It's incredibly
Yeah.
challenging to get bored. I mean, honestly, trends are changing all of the time. As well as, each individual project is so unique. Nobody
Mm-hmm.
has the same taste, even personalities. People that I
Yeah.
work with are completely different. The projects are always different, even from one bathroom to another, even if the layout's the same. The whole project is handled completely different.
Amazing.
And their budget and the look of the space. And so every project is very unique. It is incredibly hard to get bored in this business, for sure. For sure.
Wow. Okay. What other aspect? By the way, let's remind everyone, Kristin, and how we contact you.
Sure, sure, sure. So my cell phone's actually the easiest way to get a hold of me in terms of direct contact. I'm mobile all the time. That's 317-376-3351. And then my website again is www.kristenanninteriordesign.com with 2 I's.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. What other
Sure.
aspect of your work did you want to kind of pine through today and enlighten our listeners with?
Sure. So, one service that I had mentioned last time that we spoke that I have done a lot lately, and this is, I mean, part of it is partnering with some painters, and I don't want to consider it a small service for the simple fact that when it comes to color,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times in dealing with design projects, from color to lighting, right? So, with dealing with exterior color as well as interior color,
Mm-hmm.
color sets the whole tone. It sets the
Okay.
mood to some degree. When I'm working with clients, we have a picture, if you will. We're gonna redesign a room, but they have a picture that they love. We're gonna pull color out of that to kind of try to work with it. And so lighting and color, in terms of making selections for that. So paint color consults is something that I do on a really, really regular basis, and lighting plays into that tremendously. And so I'm like a huge fan when it comes to making selections like that, working with the lighting that they have and not being in a rush to make those decisions. For example, today we have an overcast day. If I was to set a paint color, pin it up here as a sample, I'm going to look at it. Well, there's some overcast. I'm going to look at it when the sun's setting. I'm going to look at it when the sun's beaming on it.
Yeah.
I'm going to look at it when, the sun starts to go down. So there's just a wide variety of ways to approach that. And when I work with clients and doing paint color consults, it's so funny because they're looking at these little, tiny 2x2, little samples on a color dial, and they don't think about it from that approach. And I always just tell people, don't rush, when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to color selection, let it sit as long as humanly possible, to feel comfortable about that decision that you're making. Because in some cases, if you're just having a paint job done, it's just the color. But if you're working on a remodel project, or something larger, you're building a new home, paint projects are not cheap either, from interior and exterior. So, and it's very expensive if you screw that up.
I'm sure. Is
It
there any color
is.
trends that we should be aware of? What are you seeing most people working with these days? Is there a certain palette that you're recommending that seems to be the hottest?
Yes. So gray
Okay.
kind of puked itself all over the world
Mm-hmm.
in the past couple of years, for sure. And a lot of people have said, it's on its way out the door.
That's
It's
what I
leaving.
heard, but no,
Yeah.
it's here to
I
stay. She's like,
I don't think it's leaving per se. Gray has always been there.
mm-hmm.
And I think because, from flippers and especially builders,
Yeah.
they kind of try to narrow their scope, if you will, to streamline their process. And so therefore, there were a lot of people that weren't offering options of a variety of different colors. It was either this color, or this is the only one that you're going to get. And gray tended to be it. And so we just saw it everywhere,
Yeah.
everywhere. Most of the real estate agents that I was doing staging consults for, it was agreeable gray, repose gray. There was just no question. That was just what they chose to do because everybody else was doing it. And it sold, it sold and it did really well. It kind of gave spaces a modern feel. But I do see us trending away from that right now. We are very quickly jumping into what I consider like a white palette.
Ooh.
So, when someone says, I want to color white, well, there's hundreds of white.
I learned that when I was doing my basement a few years ago. There's like palettes of white. It's like beige white,
Yes.
off white, snow white. I'm like,
Mm,
but like I got 100 selections, and I'm like, how do you know what white's white is best? Like, whoa.
right. Yeah. And going from trim,
Dove white. That
yeah.
was one.
Do we want a soft white? Do we want a crisp white? Do you
Mhm.
want, but we are seeing, I don't think that we're like full on into beige, if you will. We're not back into full on brown tones, but we're seeing this kind of like, if you think about like a sandy, beachy white, right? Like creamy white, not full on brown.
Okay.
But we're seeing lighter floors. For the longest time, like those rich, deep, stained dark floors was like the thing. But now we're seeing a lot more
Light
creamy
oak or
whites. Yes.
mhm.
A lot more lighter walls too. In terms of, people not necessarily, working with that neutral, if you will,
Yeah.
but not going into full on like accessible beige,
Yeah.
but just tones of white that kind of give you a little bit of a pop of color by comparison to a white trim so that we're
Okay.
not just white. But that's kind of the new trend of neutral, if you will, that I'm starting to see, which is really nice. It really brightens spaces up. And I don't think that people quite realize when in the gray palette, I learned this actually myself when I had lived in a temporary home before we moved here. The walls were gray, the
Mhm.
flooring was gray. It was a Lennar home, which Lennar was, for the longest time, you couldn't pick any other color besides Repose gray. And when I moved into the home for a period of time, none of my furniture, like it was so difficult for me because everything was just so gray.
Yeah.
There was no warmth to the home. It's really challenging to warm up a home when everything is gray. And so I'm really excited to see these nice warmer tones start to come in, some wood tones. We also see it in cabinetry too. So a white classic kitchen is timeless. But we're kind of starting to see some of the warm, sandy, stain colors, if you will, coming back into kitchens, which is really, really nice. And it looks awesome with so many different countertops.
And what I'm
So
seeing too, the big trend, I think everyone now gets like an island in their kitchen because everyone loves gathering with a high top. But let me ask you, the trend I'm seeing is you're making the island a different color than the cabinets. It's
mhm,
beautiful. I
mhm.
love that
Yeah.
trend.
I usually tell people, so I see that more often than I do like, so I tend to tell people like the island's like the showpiece, right? Because it's
Yeah.
one huge slab. It's a big,
Mm-hmm.
it's like your focal point, right? Like the fireplace
Yeah.
of your home, depending on where you have it, it's your focal point. So islands, aside from maybe like an elaborate hood or really high-end appliances, they tend to be that focal point. And so there are some really cool things that we can do with islands, not just with the island being a different color, but adding a different texture to it. Maybe we have some molding, some wood trim that's done to
Yeah.
it to kind of dress it up a little bit. There's a wide variety of different ways. So when you're sitting at your island, especially if you have kids, they're kicking
Mm-hmm.
that front face a lot.
Always.
So,
Yeah.
kind of trying to protect that either with wood paneling or molding. Some people will do a tile. So there's a lot of different ways that we can kind of dress that up. But also the slab, that you put on top of it, whether it's the granite or the quartz. Granite tends to be a little bit busier than a quartz does, but with quartz, if you have like something with really cool, gorgeous veining, we're really particular about that piece that we pick for that. So yeah, most definitely we're seeing a little bit of creativity that goes into the islands, by comparison to just keeping it safe.
Got it. Oh my
The other
goodness.
thing that I see that's happening with islands too is, that kind of layout that we have that seems to be common where you have like kitchen and then a little breakfast nook area, if you will, where we have like a small foretop and then the
Mm-hmm.
living room. It's all wide open to each other. But then we have that formal dining room space too. And I have a lot of clients that are really excited about a completely different function, if you will, where that island's kind of extending into that breakfast nook area. So we don't have a need for that additional table. And then we're doing like conversational end piece, if you will, where,
Oh,
the island's wide enough where people can sit across from each other and talk. So it kind of creates that tabletop function. However, it gives you, one of my clients called her island like an airplane liftoff.
Okay.
because it's so big.
But I think I might have mentioned this to you, but I don't mind. I have a 6 and 8 year old. I don't use my dining room. It's a toy room right now.
Yeah.
But I feel like I don't know if I'm ever going to use it. Maybe one day knock down the wall because it's next to the kitchen and make it one big, like you mentioned, like big kitchen island. I feel like that's what
Mhm.
so many people are doing.
Yeah, between that and we are transitioning a lot of dining rooms into offices. So if the home doesn't have an office space, with the change in the world, if you will, as far as how
Hmm.
people are working, I mean, we do see more people going back
Yeah.
into offices.
Yeah.
However, there's a combination of remote work, or maybe one spouse, works from home and the other doesn't, but they don't have a dedicated office space. And I don't think that people quite realized that function in their home, if
Yeah.
you will, during COVID until it happened. And reimagining their space and how they live in it definitely happened a lot. And the office space was one of those. And so, aside from like either like craft room, we see people where they have a little bit of an artistic approach, and kids were doing playroom areas, because the other thing too is, from a function standpoint, is when you have younger children, of course, you want to give them a space to go where they're visible to
Hmm.
you in that main floor space versus putting them in a loft or a basement. And so those dining room spaces, so between playrooms and offices, craft rooms, music rooms too, we see that happen. So there's a wide variety of different ways to use that space for sure.
Amazing. Well, what else did you want to share? We still have another 9 minutes left in the show. As far as the work you're doing, it's fantastic. And by the way, we should point out the areas that you work in. I know you, could you share the counties mostly that you work in Indiana?
Sure. So I am located in Westfield, Indiana,
Hmm.
which is about 30 minutes or so north of the Indianapolis area. So it's
Yep.
Hamilton County. You have Fishers, Carmel, Noblesville. Um, and the area in of itself. So Carmel, has been established for a long time. Fishers, Noblesville, Westfield's kind of, up and coming. We have Zionsville, as well. And I kind of work, my preferred geographic area, if you will, is the entire northern side
Okay.
of the city, and that's where I kind of tend to focus the majority of what I do. Um, and again, just kind of working between remodel work, 3D, 2D imaging, space planning is huge, as well. Sometimes people, they're wanting to redecor or furnish a space, and so we go in and we kind of figure out, what does the space planning look like? What do you need to be looking for in terms of furniture layout, new pieces that need to be incorporated, things of that nature. I do that a lot with people who are moving into a new home, and maybe they want to get new furniture pieces or give their space a new refresh.
Mm.
Um, so really, I mean, anything that you can think of inside or outside of a home, if it's not something I'm capable of doing,
Yeah.
I know somebody who does. So
Perfect. And do you have a favorite niche in the house, a favorite area to design? Is it kitchens? I mean, bathrooms, beautiful on the website, beautiful
mhm.
work.
I love doing
Closet
that.
spaces. What do you love doing
Yeah,
most?
yeah. Bathrooms tend to be an area that I absolutely love to do. I love doing kitchens as well, because the biggest thing with kitchens when people tend to remodel those is not just a new look, if you will, or an upgrade, but the function part of it. Function, I mean,
Yeah.
I would put all drawers on the bottom if I could, right? So like trying to be able to grab those pots and pans and those Tupperware containers,
Yeah.
and all of those little fun things that you can put inside all of those drawers and your organization, and then how do we entertain? Do we have parties? Are we the host for Christmas holidays? Things of that nature. And so how many people do we need to fit in the space, and maneuver and kind of work around? So yeah, I do. And bathrooms, what's kind of funny, what people don't realize about bathrooms is that they're like, well, it's such a small space, it shouldn't take much time. Well, no, it is small, right? So I can't have my painter and my electrician and my plumber and everybody in there all at one time. So they tend to do go in a little bit more phases, if you will. But kitchens and bathrooms tend to be an area where I really love, because to me, they kind of have the most wow, in
Yeah.
terms of taking it all out and putting it all
Can,
in,
can
the
I
new
just
bag.
ask? I need some help with this. Okay.
Yeah.
I have two little kids, right? So our downstairs bathroom where mostly everybody goes, we have, the molding on the bottom of the floor, but that splash up factor in a bathroom from washing hands and from children peeing, right? The
Yeah.
molding is starting to um disintegrate. And it looks horrible. And I noticed that at public bathrooms too, the same concept. Could you put like a fake, they have those like, plastic moldings. What should you do on the bottom of the bathroom? Because there's a lot of wet factor in there. And then the molding the paint starts peeling and the wood starts warping. What would you suggest? Because you like that nice molding look in bathrooms sometimes, or do tile straight up. What do you suggest?
Yeah, that would be what you just said. So that's why a lot of times in commercial spaces too, if you go into like the bathroom stalls, if you will, like you start to see where at least halfway up where they've kind of done, a tile, around that to kind of protect it. That would 100% be the first direction that I would go, is just considering an accent, if you will. Sometimes like in powder baths, right? Like they're a smaller space.
So
and
small.
So, behind that toilet, you can kind of do a really nice accent feature behind it. And then if you don't like the idea of tile, the other thing that I might suggest in terms of washability, would be a paint that has a little bit more sheen to it so that, the water kind of doesn't stick to it or kind of rolls off.
Yeah, because I have a round wall in my bathroom, so I can't tile it. So it's round, so it looks like a boat, like a little. It's like a little so I can't tile it. So I'm like, what do I do? But I like that molding look on the bottom, but it's the molding's wearing. I got to get rid of it soon.
Right. And so you're talking about like the trim that's kind of going around
the trim on the bottom. Yeah, exactly. It's gotten wet, so it's getting that look to it. So I don't know what else to do.
Well, and I said the other thing is that, depending on how all of that space kind of connects is, I would just consider something that has a more protective coat on it, if you will, where that water is going to kind of roll off. So like, for example, in my kitchen where my dogs drink all of their water and it laps and it kind of rolls on the wall all of the time. So the idea of putting like a higher sheen coat, if you will, on that, kind of try to protect that a little bit more. That's why in bathrooms you see where, we'll use a little bit higher gloss of a paint to kind of repel all of that moisture that goes into a bathroom. The paint sheen will help protect that, quite a bit. And then obviously, just researching some additional products, but you also don't want your space to look like plastic.
My goodness. Good point. Good point. All right. Kristin Ann, Interior Design. As we wrap up for today, how did you want to leave off for everyone?
Well, I would just say I'm extremely flexible. And so, most people tend to assume that, in working with a designer, I need to be looking at higher end things, or I need to have an expensive project to work on. And that is just not the case. I consider myself to be an everyday average person that likes to work with everybody. And so I don't have what would consider to be like a menu of options where, you need to have deep pockets to kind of try to work with the designer. And so I tend to create environments or services, if you will, that kind of tailor to everybody, whether you're a Target shopper or you're a Crate and Barrel shopper.
I love Target. I'm a Target shopper. But oh my goodness. Let everything in moderation, right? Sometimes you can find a good pick here or there, get a good deal. So, all right. Thank you so much. And Kristin, remind us how we can reach out to you one more time.
Sure. www.KristinAnnInteriorDesign.com with 2 I's, or 317-376-3351.
Perfect. Thank you so much again for being here. Enjoy the rest of the beautiful summer day. And I will in New York as well. It's changing on all of us. And thank you again for your patience today with me. I appreciate it. Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Great. Have a good day.
You too, sweetheart. See you next week.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
when I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, I mean, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.